but it's funny because my first impression was substantiated the second time I met you, the third or fourth time I was, and then by maybe somewhere in that 5 to 10 times of being in your company, because you touched on things that don't come easily for a lot of people. I'm gonna blow a little smoke. I'm gonna aggrandize Kevin E. West. But you talked about the spiritual component, the psychological component, to a degree, an entrepreneurial component, and I think that you naturally have that skill set that was so perfect for what you were doing. I'm sure that along the way you got a little bit of advice from someone or somebody suggested something, but to naturally sort of organically have that, there's I can't think of too many people in my circles that oh yeah, this person could do exactly that, because that involved compartmentalizing to such a degree that you could go out as an actor and then you could turn around, take that, whatever you did with that information at the beginning. Because I don't know if you went to an audition and you found out, back then we actually went to the physical space instead of now, obviously, sadly, under, COVID conditions. But let me try to make a point here and then offer just a thought, which is for you to come back from an audition, have something that maybe you went to the Actors Network with at 5:00 to have a power group meeting and actually share it, and it was of value that might help one of those people in that circle the following day. Absolutely remarkable. I'm thinking, I don't have a lot of people like that, and I think it was the thing about you that I certainly want to impart to people so that they understand as this channel changes, because really what this comes down to is, who are you, right? And I'm just one opinion, but what we will do is populate this channel with other people and their take, and they can certainly go to kevinewest.com and see your philanthropy, which is one thing I didn't even, it might
that's
be
a whole other Oprah.
That's a whole other Oprah. But I think you were very uniquely qualified to do something that was so necessary certainly at a time in my life, and I'm sure I'm voicing.
It's still necessary.
It
may in some ways even be because of digital technology. It may even be more necessary today. Mm-hmm. But the irony is, as you said that, this is funny because what I'm about to say, I've never said before. Now,
look straight into camera. Let me sit up right here.
Considering how much I've run my mouth for 3 decades, for me to say I've never said this before is interesting. But this is fluid. I've known you for a long mm-hmm. time. But if you think about a foundation of a house being 4 corners, right? And what you just said in the center of that is, eventually you get to the place where there's this thing that sits in the middle. I could not have come up with this back then. I wouldn't have known to say this back then.
Right.
So let me make the statement before I draw these 4 corners that just came to me as you
sort
of defined the who you are. Sometimes you don't even realize who you are when you're younger. But the first and foremost philosophy that I have about that, which I know seems odd, is this is not an individual competition. I never saw it that way. And that's probably because I played competitive sports. It's probably because I played, ball at a collegiate level. And so I looked at this in my own way as sort of similar to way fitness people and should more and more be looked at in terms of one's physical health, because every body is different. Mm-hmm. It doesn't process things the same way. It doesn't process types of foods the same way, and it doesn't process exercise the same way. And so whatever I was bringing back then, as you said, from an audition or from a job, I was not bringing back, and I had this said to me many times, by the way. I had dozens and dozens of actors who found out what I was trying to start and do in 91 and 92, and they're like, oh, that's not ever going to work. You're not going to actually get actors to actually help each other out. And yet, oddly, won awards and existed for 24 years. Yeah, it did work. But so in the center of that sort of the 4 corners I came up with while you were talking, going back to 91, at that moment in my life, I know it's because, and I still don't to this day, you and I could take the same piece of material and we're never going to do it the same way. It's not going to happen. And yet, if we both do it well, and this is a key part about casting, it's one of the reasons why we don't like the business, is we could both be brilliant, but only one of us can get the job.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that decision is going to come down to things that we simply don't have and will never have control of. And that is, do we want somebody who's a little more cherubic with a German head, or somebody who's got salt and pepper with the glasses? I don't know. Blue eyes, green eyes. Who's supposed to decide that? Well, we don't. And so that's why early on in those first 4 years, I'm like, oh, I can't look. I can function with the energy and the passion of a ball player, but philosophically, to look at this profession that way, you would wind up sort of almost disliking or finding a reason to dislike every fellow actor you ever met.
100%.
And that as a concept
Yeah.
for me, being the kid who grew up without a father, without any brothers, with just a sister, like that's not how that felt somewhat cynical to me, and I just didn't want to do that. And the funny part about it is, in '91, you have the four corners that sort of made me up, which I can look back at now, but I couldn't see it then.